Hey, what's up? I'm Wes, and we're gonna be doing some hair cutting today. So this is Miss Sierra. You might know her. She's the Hairstory coach. Oh, and what we're gonna be focusing in on today is actually creating a really precise line with a razor. Oftentimes when we think about a razor, we think about something that either could be a little shredded or very jagged. And I just wanna show you that it's possible to create a really strong line with a razor. So let's get started. So with Sierra, eventually her goal really is to get into more of a one length kind of cool micro bob. Right now she has a lot of layers happening at top. So what we want to do essentially is to kind of leave those out of the equation and really build my line there. But the line that I'm working on essentially is going to land right about the middle of the ear. So I've actually taken all of this from the underneath and I'm going to kind of do a slight soft undercut. The reason why is because that'll just help Sierra's hair kind of collapse onto itself. Sierra is blessed with a lot of hair, so this just really helps it lay in a little bit tighter. If I were to build up a lot of weight with graduation, what essentially would happen is that once this hair that we're gonna leave over, landing on top of that would get really exaggerated, and that's not kind of the look I'm going for. So I've taken my first center section and I'm really kind of just cutting from the top down. What I'm doing is I'm working this back and forth, just really going in and setting all of this in. I'm just working with all of these kind of at just soft little angles. So I'm here and I'm grabbing it, and you can see my stroke right now is actually more medium to broad because I'm looking for a very diffused line. So I'm just following the head shape here with my sectioning, and then my stroke itself is really quite broad. The broadness of this is gonna help this grow out really nicely. So it's not like an extreme like undercut. I would do that more either with a clipper, or I would do that more with like scissor over comb. But we're not doing that today. So you'll notice with Sierra, she has a little bit of kind of like this longer little bits in here. I'm leaving those currently right now because I'm going to get rid of those with my scissor. I want those to lay a little bit tighter and really kind of eliminate them. So that's going to be more towards the end of this. So now I'm here and I'm just going to do the same sectioning, working from the top of the triangle, pulling that out. I almost have to bring my body up because it is elevated. And then if I lose tension, it's okay. But you want to make sure that you just go back until you have a nice amount of tension. Tension is really, really important whenever you're working with a razor haircut, because you just need this to have a place so that it can firmly grab onto, if you will. Now I'm left with my little corner here. We got these little guys that are left out, so I'm gonna actually go through, tighten that up. Also, what you'll notice is a lot of times you get a little bit of this little overhang here. So if I need to, I can just kind of grab those little sections and tighten that bad boy up. So I'm in here just with my fingers and I'm working all the way to the ear just to really tighten everything up. I'm going to switch this tool because I really want to kind of focus in on getting this down. The comb is very flat to the head. Everything is at an angle. That allows for me to not get a lot of like lines that build up. So that's a good trick just in general. I'm actually using the width of the comb almost as like you would with a guard with a clipper. So if I want to go even a little tighter, I might go to the more narrow point of my comb because that has less space between the skin and the hair. So this is just me really going in and kind of refining all of this so that we build something that's kind of nice. And also, I think it's important for me to kind of knock this stuff out of the way because it throws my eye off. You know, even if I wanted to go up and like kind of refine any of these little edges, like if I don't get rid of this kind of bulky part that kind of throws the shape off, I don't really know what I'm dealing with. Like, see, that's a little bit, like I need to take this just a little bit higher just to make this feel overall more balanced. And now I'm looking to kind of like keep a little bit of length, so I'm actually tilting my comb slightly. Things are getting a little nicer. I'm kind of into it. What I'm not really into is visually like this little where the natural separation is before the hairline drops lower and this side. So I'm thinking to myself like, well, I could tighten that part up and that would be cooler and that would feel more balanced. So that's what I'm gonna do. So I'm gonna really get in here and kind of tighten that bad boy up. So now I've you saw me kind of tighten that up, and now I'm just gonna kind of tighten this little bit up so it feels more fluid. Nice. And now I'm looking at this guy, and I'm just kind of like checking to see how much I need to bring that bad boy up. The cool part that I think about like hairlines is that they're not always consistent themselves. So it's not one of those things where you just get to go through and do, where you just get to do the same thing on the same side. Exactly. You really have to, it almost asks you to be more engaged with your haircut and pull back. I think oftentimes what happens for us as hairdressers is that when we're learning something new or when we're going through and kind of just trying to be really like precise and detailed, we get super tunnel vision. And that's awesome because you know the angle of the blade, you know the angle of the scissor, you know the angle of the comb. But it's also really important to kind of pull back so that you get the full big picture. And that's what's gonna make an overall kind of visual aesthetic work. So for right now, I'm like pretty stoked about everything. I'm just kind of going through and detailing. And when I go down here and I'm looking to kind of get something really close, this, when I first saw it, like really scared the hell out of me. I was like, oh my God, those scissors are like right on the skin. So I got really nervous, but you just lay it really flat and kind of at a slight angle and you're just working it back and forth. But once you kind of start to get it and feel that it's just like the flat part of the shear, then you're cool. Awesome. I'm ready and prepared. We've really done all of the work here. It's looking really good to me. And now I'm gonna start to kind of work into creating my strong line, sectioning my first line. So I'm going through and I'm thinking, okay, it's right behind the ear now, but where is that line gonna meet so that this feels right in here? And then I'm gonna go through, check everything again. I'm pulling this section straight out and I'm really going through and I'm doing really tiny strokes. The reason why I'm doing the tiny strokes is because of this. I want to create a strong precision line. That was our goal today. So that's really, 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 really important. When you do a broader stroke, you're gonna have a bigger sense of separation. When you tighten the stroke and it's just little bits like this, you're gonna have a stronger line, but the benefit of the softness of the razor, which will make it kind of more malleable haircut and also grow out a lot better because of that diffusion. And I'm taking each section and I like to make sure that the sections can fit into my fingers themselves. So I don't like to go past the knuckles and I like to bring it out because this way I have enough room to get my blade in there. Once again, it's there. Any little stragglers that I find, I go back and I refine. So I'm thinking, okay, cool. I'm at this side right here. And what you're gonna notice is while I'm at this side, this is great. This is telling me that I'm on the right path because everything's starting to meet up nicely. Cool, so I'm going straight across here for my next side. And I like to just mimic my sectioning the way that I really want to cut it, because I find that whenever I go through, if I tilt it, then I have a tendency to comb and tilt, and then my fingers tilt. So because I'm looking for this to be really nice and kind of like square across here and not very angled, it's really important for me to follow that within my sectioning as well. So I'm going to bring that out. It's at a slight angle, and I'm coming in, and I'm just using the tip of my blade just back and forth in this really kind of like nice motion, creating that kind of like strong yet diffused line, manageable sections on each one so that I control the tension. I feel like if I get it past my knuckle, the issue is that I don't have as much tension. So when you don't have as much tension, then things get a little wobbly, and that's the result of in the haircut. So I'm not looking for that. So now I'm moving on to my next section. So I'm going to go through, and I'm following that, and it's just right behind the ear. So we're not transitioning to the side yet. This will pretty much be my last section on this side before we move into transitioning over. So because I'm getting closer to the head and behind the ear, I'm going to be lowering my elevation. So I'm moving on to my other side. I've already sectioned it just to the ear, and I'm really coming in. I'm still working, grabbing, and kind of slightly elevating this down to build up a slight amount of elevation. My stroke is still very small, so not a very broad stroke at all, just because I'm looking to build a really defined precision-esque line. So my back section is nice. Now I'm going to move into our transition. So with our transition, what I'm looking to do is to kind of go around the head. I like to go through and really find the spot where I'm landing at this kind of like lower recession, or landing on the higher recession. It doesn't really matter where you land. I'm just always asking myself, what is the spot? What is the section that gives me the most control? You can handle a lot of hair with a razor, but you know, you want to make sure that you're in a place where you're comfortable and you're not getting so much hair that you're creating, things get wobbly. But this is where things get a little interesting and a little tricky. So I just want to make sure that I'm working within the right amount of space here. So I just like to make sure that I have that right where. So I'm not grabbing all of this section right now. Manageable pieces. That's what's going to make this really work for you. Now, we always talk about like the jump that the ear creates. So this obviously sticks out, that throws off your line. Whenever we're working with a scissor, it's really easy. We just kind of have the tension within the comb and we kind of tap it and then we nip away. But remember, we always need tension whenever we're working with the razor. So it has to be in my fingers. That's where the tension comes from. So in order to compensate for that, what I'm doing is I'm taking all of this hair that's in front of here, in front of that little ear panel, if you will, anything that would hit the ear and make that line kind of pop up and make it go off and wobbly looking, I'm directing it back. The reason why I'm directing it back is because the distance equals the length. So I'm really kind of creating my own little place where I'm getting to create something that is not going to pop up. And, you know, I may go through at the end if it's kind of, if it doesn't pop out as much, I may want to go through and kind of nip that off once everything's dry with the scissor if it looks too long. But at least I have it to work with. Now, this is behind the ear, and I can see my line, right? So instead of me bringing this piece out and trying to use that as a reference or a guide, I'm actually mentally in my mind going, okay, well, I know it's going to be there. Use the comb to visualize it if you need to. That's perfectly cool. I just don't want to bring this piece because remember, technically this is going to be a little bit longer because we've over directed it. So this is going to make sure that I'm really keeping more consistent. So I'm thinking like, okay, right there, that's going to be cool. That's where I need to be. So I'm here, my elevation is lower, but I have enough distance to really make this all work because my fingers are crossed. And now I'm just grabbing these little guys. If you cannot get something, it's all about tension, right? So this feels weak to me right now. Like I don't feel like that's got a lot of tension. So if I don't have a lot of tension, that means I don't have a lot of control. And whenever you feel that, that's okay. What you need to do is you just need to grab it. I lay it right where I need it to be. And then I'm going through here. And I'm just like nipping that off. Now I've kind of got all this going for me. Now I'm gonna bring down the rest of this section. Just I wanna look. So for me, I'm kind of like, okay, well, cool. I can see through that. That looks like a manageable amount of hair for me to work with. So instead of me being like, oh, well, there's a rule that I have to have 3 sections. That's not the game we're playing. What we're playing is, is this section workable and right? So you're engaged in the haircut and kind of figuring it out along the way. So it's just not autopilot sectioning. So now I'm going to work from the center all the way into this. Bringing this slightly out. Now, once you get to around where the spiral is, you know, hair has a tendency to lay where it's going to lay within this area of the head. The crown has these growth directions. Sometimes they shoot off this way. What you'll notice that I'm going to be doing is I'm actually going to be following the natural growth direction. What has a tendency to happen is if I force this to go into a different direction than what it wants to go, then you're going to find that those little bits kind of like jump up and look a little wonky and weird. So if it wants to go that direction in this area, I'm just going to follow that, but then I'm going to meet into this line here. Once again, the tilt of the blade going through really tight and nice. Now, because I'm bringing the hair out and extending it past the ear, I don't need to worry about my little trick about going over that again. I can just elevate that out. You can see this is a really like strong, kind of precise line. Now I also know that this is going to kind of start to build out here. So what I like to do before I start working into the next sides is I'm going to go through, I'm bringing things at an angle out. I'm looking for very dark spots. Dark spots mean that there's heaviness in the hair. So I'm going to put my razor in, tilt like a key, and then drag it down. This is going to release some of that weight because I don't want this to like build up so heavy. So that's kind of a good trick to think about if you're wanting to work with a tight line. If you're starting out, it's just important that you understand the strokes themselves and the different effects that you get from them. So you can see that I pulled this from the center out and forward like this. And for me, it's landing right on that kind of like higher recession area. That's good. I like this line that it's really kind of like, I can see that I could pull this all straight down and create this strong line. So I'm going to be starting in the center. When I'm doing this, I'm kind of pulling out my previous section, elevating this down, just to create that slight little bit of graduation, and I think it's gonna look cool on this and kind of soften the blow, if you will. But still, we're dealing with that stroke that's really kind of tight and small. Now, I had told you previously about how you could broaden the stroke, and I will show you that right now. I could broaden the stroke in this area. That creates more erratic bits, which makes things a little softer and releases a lot more weight. That's a little bit advanced, but I just thought, hey, you're here, let's do it. So then I'm going through and I'm really kind of pulling this back. Remember, this is our little section. This is our little area where we have concerns about the pop of the ear. So I'm using over direction as a way to really create what I need to create. Now I'm just left with this front section. And remember what we talked about earlier about going through, visualizing where you want that line to be, and really get in there. Now the difference on this side is that I'm going to be working from the front to the back. So when I was working with Sierra right there, I felt a little bit of like tugging. That means that one of two things. Either you are not on the sharpest point of the blade, or it means that the hair is getting dry. So you can see now I can go through, release a little bit more weight, and always kind of taking those out, these kind of sections, angling it out. I don't want to cut into any of my previous sections. So this really helps me have the control I need. Now I'm going to check this here and see what I'm working with. Now, for some people, this could be a density thing. You know, we had just like, we got to comb this down and we had like one section, and that's the same on this particular side. But if I were to look at this side and look at the ends and be like, yo, that looks like a lot of hair, I don't think I'm gonna have the control I need, then what I would do is I would just take it and subdivide that section. So it's all about knowing what you need within each section. And that's kind of cool because you do get, you know, when you've been doing stuff for a while, we get a little on autopilot. And this kind of wakes you up. You kind of got to look at it and be engaged with the whole process. So I'm going to start getting dry. This is going to be really, really cool. I'm going to try and work with her natural texture. What I really like is I like it when you have like a really strong shape, but then the interior is all kind of natural. Like it just kind of is a great juxtaposition, like this messy kind of fluidness meeting kind of a strong line. I think visually is really interesting and really appealing, and also makes these feel a little bit more modern. Cool. Just using a little bit of the dress up just because I'm about to apply some heat in here. And I want the protection that's gonna come from the dressed up. We have finished kind of like lightly roughing this dry, making sure that it's not overly styled. That's not what I'm looking for today. And remember how we talked about kind of looking at things in kind of a big picture way? This is my opportunity not only just to define some of these little bits and kind of refine everything, but it's also an opportunity for me to look at the overall shape and ask myself, what could I tweak to make it even better? So for her, you know, she had this previous haircut that she's growing out in terms of the layers, and she's growing out the bangs a little bit. And so we brought this line up, and it's really kind of like, it's very precise because we use that small stroke, but I'm seeing a lot of movement from the layers. And also I'm seeing a lot of movement from the curve of the bang. And then it just feels like it's a little bit like kind of, there's no transition between the two. So what I'm actually gonna do is just add a little bit of a detail here by cutting that kind of hard corner off. So I've just taken my section like this, is just right in front of the ear, this diagonal. And I'm actually going to use my scissor. Boom. And then I'm going to bring these guys forward and kind of nip off any of that little corner there. And then I can also kind of go through here and start my refining process. So see how I've got that little guy that escaped the forest? That's cool, as long as I don't let it leave the door. Now that we've opened kind of this and kind of cut that hardness away, how this feels more fluid, as opposed to this making everything feel like almost too square for me. Like I didn't want her to look like she was like peering outside of a little box. So I'm gonna go through on this side, doing my same sectioning there. So it's going from behind here, and I work this forward. Then I'm gonna go through here, and I'm just gonna really go for it. I'm gonna bring that, and I still have this bad boy. Bye. And then I'm looking at here, and I'm just seeing like, okay, does that line match up? And see how this one, that over direction is really kind of like made sure that the pop of the ear is secure, but it's still a little bit too long. Like her ear doesn't pop out that much. So I just go through, grab that little section, and make sure that we're kind of keeping all this stuff like really kind of tight and cool. And I might go through and kind of release a little bit of weight from the side. Now I'm also looking for like a little bit more definition in the final look. So I'm going through and I'm going to use hair balm on dry hair. I really like hair balm because it's this perfect balance between moisture and hold. There's no silicone in this product, so it actually, the moisture does penetrate into the hair, which I really like. That means someone like Sierra could continuously wear this product for days without it feeling like it was starting to build up on top of the hair the way that like a silicone would. So I like that advantage. For Sierra on this haircut, I like the fact that this is all going forward. I think that just adds a little interesting component to the style as opposed to having a really defined part on this particular haircut. So we're at the end of our YouTube tutorial Hairstory Studio precision-esque bowl bob haircut. So like any good YouTube video, you should probably go like, subscribe, and comment.